Hey everyone, my name is Devin Walton. I am one of the faculty at Northern Essex Community College. I'm in the Computer Information Science department. And recently, you've probably seen a lot of headlines in the news related to artificial intelligence. Uh, Probably heard the word Chat GPT a lot lately, and maybe even the word Microsoft Bing. These are all new technologies related to artificial intelligence. And today I'm just going to be going over a little bit of like what those technologies are and how they might have an impact in education within the coming years. So to start off with, like what exactly is artificial intelligence? Like when we talk about Chat GPT and when we talk about all of these AI technologies that are able to generate content, how exactly do they work? Well, they're mostly facilitated through statistics. So as we can see on this slide, we have the sentence, "The best thing about AI is its ability to blank." And essentially, how AI is able to generate these sentences and generate even these essays is it has a statistical model where it is able to predict what the next word ought to be in a sentence based on the previous words. So what the AI is doing is it's looking at the previous words in this sentence. It's looking at the best thing about AI is its ability to blank. And it's attempting to guess at what the next word should be based on all the previous based on all the information been exposed to in the past. So these AI models have been exposed to things like all the novels that are published in English, movie transcripts, conversational transcripts from social media. Uh, so it looks at all of this information, and it attempts to use that information to make a prediction about what word makes sense in this context to come next. And once it selects a word, like in this case, it would most likely select the word learn, it adds that to the sentence, and then it repeats the process again, where it tries to figure out what the most likely next word or what most likely next punctuation would be. So that's the general gist of how artificial intelligence works. It works through statistics. And like I was saying, each time a new word is added, it impacts the probability of what the next word will be. And you can kind of think of this a little bit as like rolling a dice to figure out what the next word should be. Because in some cases, it doesn't always pick what the most likely or what the word with the highest probability to come next is. Uh, as it turns out, when you always select the word that has the highest probability, you end up with prose or you end up with language that is kind of flat, that doesn't have a lot of personality to it. So there's a little bit of dice rolling going on behind the scenes to predict what word should come next. And in the broader cultural context of artificial intelligence, it is a pretty unique technology. Uh, I have a graph here that shows Chat GPT daily usage versus Instagram daily usage within their first year of usage. So obviously, the Instagram data is from a while ago since we've had Instagram for a while, but the Chat GPT data is more recent. Began in November, and it's comparing each of their ascents. No, at the time, Instagram had a pretty meteoric rise in popularity. It's partially why Facebook spent billions of dollars to acquire them, because they grew very quickly. But if we look at this graph, you can see the little orange dotted line representing Instagram. You can see that it acquired users at a much, much slower pace than this blue line, which is ChatGPT's daily active users. So ChatGPT and AI technology in general is kind of unparalleled in our culture in terms of uh, new user acquisition and growth. So it really is having a big, major, unprecedented impact on our culture. And it's doing this in several ways. It's impacting how we fundamentally find and utilize information. So within this slide, I share a little excerpt of a search that I did through Microsoft's Bing. Now, Bing is an AI model that is a little different than ChatGPT. ChatGPT relies on historical data that it's collected from before 2021. Bing is a little different since Bing has access to the internet, so it can access current information. It can access information like today's headlines in the New York Times in order to generate answers. In this particular example, I had it read through articles in the Eagle Tribune uh, from last month, and I had it look for articles that were related to sociology, and I had it pull an excerpt from those articles, and then I had it write a little blurb for each of those articles about how they relate to sociology. Uh, so if I wanted to do this as a sociology professor or a sociology instructor, go through the newspaper, go through the archive, and look up articles that might be relevant for the students to look at and make connections between course content and the real world. This would take me a long time, right? Just reading through the articles itself, that would be a pretty exhaustive process. That would take hours. And then writing the little blurb of how that article relates to what we're covering currently in sociology, that would take even more time. But you can see here, I was able to do all of that in a single search, right? This took seconds to accomplish and create this table for me. So this really does change the way that we can find and really utilize content in the classroom and how we can really enrich the experience for our learners and really tailor content around, real life examples that might be affecting their community. So what else is AI supposed to do? Well, one of the other promises of AI that we hear a lot in the media is this promise to eliminate routine tasks in favor of more creative ones. Now, what do we mean by that, and what does that mean in a educational context? Uh, so one of the tough tasks that that usually isn't a highly creative task on my part, but is something that is absolutely needs to be done for the purposes of in-class assessment is designing quizzes and designing quizzes that are, not just relevant to student interest, but also relevant to the content objectives of whatever I'm teaching. Uh, and the nice thing with AI is that we can use it to kind of simplify a lot of these tasks that we have to do a lot and make them a little easier to perform. So the example that I show here is I asked Bing to create a 4-question multiple choice quiz on pages 20 to 60 of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I specified a particular version of the book, so we got a matchup between the pagination of that edition of the book as well as the questions that would be generated. And I asked it to make questions focused on the theme of freedom. So as you can see in the example, it was able to pull that book up. It was able to look through that book, look through pages 20 to 60, and it was able to identify a set of questions that would relate to the theme that I specified. And it provided not just the questions, but also the answer. Now, if I had to do this myself, even if I was very familiar with this particular edition of Huckleberry Finn, this would be kind of a somewhat daunting task, right? You'd have to allot a certain amount of time to do this, and you would probably have to keep doing this each semester if you wanted to mix up your quizzes enough so that the answers wouldn't readily be available for students to share between semesters. Uh, and AI has the ability to make not necessarily eliminate the task entirely, but ultimately make routine tasks like this a little bit more manageable and easier to do. So we have all of these new methods for accessing information and automating routine tasks through AI. What are some of the drawbacks? So what are some of the things that we're worried about? Uh, One of the things that we've most likely seen a lot in the media is this idea of a lot more cheating and a lot more essay generation, which absolutely certainly that's happening in my classes, and I'm sure that it's happening in many of your classes as well. And the tricky part with this is it is difficult to detect content generated by the AI reliably. Now, there are tools out there that promise that they can do it with very high reliability and a high robustness, but they're not reliable across all different AI models. So one of the models that has gained a lot of fame lately is uh, this detection model called Chat or GPT-0, and it promises to be able to detect content generated by Chat GPT uh, with like nearly 100% accuracy. Well, it's true that it is very good at detecting content generated by Chat GPT. It has an error rate or a false positive rate of maybe 2%, which isn't too bad. Uh, but when it comes to identifying information and content generated from a different model like Microsoft's Bing, its error rate is like 80%. It's just absolutely terrible at doing detection at that. And more than likely, as more of these models come out, as Google releases its Bard tool, and we get maybe another tool from Facebook Meta, it's going to be very difficult to have uh, one all-inclusive anti-cheating tool or a detection tool. It's going to be it's going to take a long time before we reach this equilibrium between the new models coming out and the new techniques for generating content and our ability to accurately detect whether or not that content was generated by an AI or a human. So this, I think, will be an ongoing problem, and I don't think it is a good idea to focus too much on detection tools. I think the better strategy, at least for right now, is to focus on policy rules and think about ways that you can still encourage students to use this AI technology, but use it in a more ethical way and use it in a way that aligns with whatever your course objectives are. Uh, because students are always going to find a way around these cheating detection tools. Uh, so I think it is a much better strategy to try to invite them to engage with the technology in in a way that helps them, that helps their learning experience. Now, developing these policies is not going to be easy, right? It's going to be difficult, and it'll often involve designing activities that are a bit different than maybe you've done in the past. It'll involve thinking more strategically around, what are some of the ways that uh, rapid content generation can be integrated into the learning objectives for a particular class. Uh, Now, this could be difficult for a lot of liberal arts courses, but I think there are a lot of avenues that you could go to pursue for helping students you engage with this technology while still meeting the learning objectives of even like an English composition class. Uh, One example that I frequently cite is this idea of having the AI generate multiple essays, and you give the student a rubric to evaluate both of these AI generated essays by, and then have them select what what essay they think would receive the better grade and then provide justification as why that is true. Now, this is just one example uh, of a type of assignment that you could use that would work in conjunction with ChatGPT. There are plenty of other examples out there, and I'm sure in the coming months there will be even more thought of. And I think ultimately, like as we adapt to I think it is going to be a net benefit to all of us. There was a recent paper that's in the process of publication uh, by a couple of economy students at MIT. Basically, they found that use of ChatGPT and the use of AI technologies can often boost the performance of knowledge workers like instructors, programmers, uh, the like, people that do a lot of either programming or a lot of writing. Can They found that it boosts their productivity by like 50%, like perform tasks a lot faster. And they're able to get to more creative tasks like I was talking about before, and really focus in on like the important whatever the important objectives are for their work. And I know right now it's a big transition. This is all happening very quickly, right? Like this all started at the end of November, and it's like we're in a completely different world in terms of having to deal with, uh, you know, essay generation and all these different ways students are finding to get beyond our detection tools. But this really isn't all too different than when the internet uh, first was making a mainstream splash 25 years ago. We had to rethink our pedagogy back then. We had to rethink uh, what what the ease of information access meant in terms of the assignments we were assigning people back then. We had to adapt our curriculums and we had to adapt our pedagogy style to adapt to the ability of students to rapidly access internet, to be able to do these massive searches on Google. And I think in the same way, we will also adapt to AI, right? It's just going to take a little time, but things will things will work out. And another thing to keep in mind, I guess, is just the idea of being able to automate essays and things like emails. This is really just the opening act of AI, right? This is AI still in a very nascent stage. It's basically we're still in the infancy of modern AI, and it's uncertain what will be coming next. But some of the technology that is on the current horizon involves like the dynamic generation of voice avatars and even like visual avatars. So the idea is that you would be able to have AI generate an avatar that looks like you and would also be able to talk like you. Right now, there are a couple solutions for like synthetic voices. There's a site called 11 Labs that is able to take a clip of you speaking, and they're able to reproduce your voice synthetically, just from that clip alone. And whatever you type into the little chat box, it will be able to say in your voice with the appropriate like intonation and pauses for breathing and stress. It's actually very convincing and scary a little bit. Uh, Similarly, there's this site called Synthesia that is able to generate a video avatar of you speaking, uh, and that is also pretty convincing. There's a little uncanny valley still with some of that technology, but you can imagine in a couple years it wouldn't be too crazy to expect us to be able to generate these avatars that would be able to speak in our voices and potentially even deliver content that we type out that we script for it. So that is what some of a sneak peek at some of the stuff that might be coming with AI. And I think to prepare for what lies ahead with AI, the best way to prepare is just to become comfortable and somewhat knowledgeable with the current tools, just so that you don't get overwhelmed and too lost as technology continues to march on. So my advice would be to become a little bit more familiar with things like ChatGPT and Google Bing as it becomes more available. The next thing I wanted to talk about today, after this introduction on AI, was some of the tools that I've been working on with utilizing the AI. Uh, and I've designed these tools to accomplish specific tasks that are education related. And one of the first tools that I want to show you all is this syllabus helper tool that I developed. And essentially, what this tool does is it functions as an interface for talking with the AI, basically. You type in information into the tool, it sends that information out to the AI, and it delivers the response from the AI. So, with this syllabus helper tool, we are able to input information related to constructing a syllabus. So there's three pieces of information that this interface collects from you. It collects what topic you want, what style of course you want it to be, and how many weeks you want the course to be. And with this information, it's able to give you a somewhat comprehensive syllabus. Obviously, you would probably want to tweak it a little bit, but it would be a good starting point for understanding like what topics you would want to hit on a week to week basis, what assignments you might want to use to meet some of the learning objectives for each week, stuff like that. Um, so to give you an example of how this works, we can pick a topic. So let's pick uh, like a literature course involving, let's say, Afro Caribbean authors. Uh, and we could select the style. For now, we could do it collaboration based, but for now, let's still do like a writing intensive course. And let's just say 10 weeks. We'll make a 10-week syllabus for a writing intensive course about literature involving Afro-Caribbean authors. And so right now, what it is doing is it took the information that the three inputs we essentially gave it. It's packaging that information up, and it's sending it out to the Chat GPT or OpenAI server in order to get a response back from that. Now, we won't get a response back until it's able to write out this whole syllabus, which usually takes somewhere around 30 seconds. But once it does, we should see that a syllabus appear in this right window next to the drop downs. And I think one important thing to note is we don't necessarily have to do like a literature related topic. We don't even necessarily need like a liberal arts related topic. We could still do like an engineering topic. We could do a statistics topic. We could do really an open domain. We could select any sort of topic for developing a syllabus. So here we go. Afro-Caribbean literature and writing. It starts with the title. It starts with a brief summary of what is going to happen in this course. So it's going to cover some poetry, fiction, nonfiction. It gives you an overview of what some reasonable learning objectives might be for the whole class. It gives you a basic rubric that you could use for doing final grades. And here we get into kind of the meat and potatoes, which is a week by week breakdown of how the content would be allocated. We get our week one title of the topic. We get a description of what that topic involves. We get some key learning objectives for that week. And then we also get a tentative assignment that could be used for that week. So in week one, we have the introduction to Afro-Caribbean literature. In week two, we have post-colonial theory. Week three, we have poetry with an Afro-Caribbean focus. Week four, we have fiction, nonfiction for week five. And it goes on all the way down to week 10, where we have like a final project or something like that. Now, in some cases, we could tweak this a little bit so that it would select specific authors. But since we're relying on the ChatGPT OpenAI technology, it doesn't have access to the internet. So this particular tool would not be able to provide us with like links to open access resources. If we were to run the same query, if we took, the prompt that's being generated on the back end here, and we put it into Bing, we could actually get Bing to give us links to open access resources that would be integrated into the syllabus because Bing is connected to the internet. ChatGPT and GPT-3 aren't. So that's just one of the drawbacks to these tools that in the future might be remedied. I have right down here to use OpenStack's textbooks, but as of right now, that just isn't a feature of OpenAI's API for ChatGPT. So that's essentially the syllabus helper tool. I also made this companion tool for the syllabus helper tool for actually designing assignments that could be then integrated into the, or assignments that could be integrated in the class that, may have been highlighted or specified within the syllabus. So here we would just like type in either a topic or whatever was specified in the syllabus for a potential assignment. We would type in what style of assignment we want it to be. We could do like a research assignment, a problem-based assignment, a design-based assignment. And then we would select like what the modality we could do either in person or online, or we could do it individuals, pairs, small groups. We have a lot of options and flexibility with precisely how we want to design our assignment. So in this case, let's do something a little bit different. Let's not do literature related. Let's do something related to, let's say, hydrology. That's always kind of interesting. Uh, and we can do some sort of, let's further specify that since hydrology is actually a pretty big topic. Uh, let's do the hydrology of estuaries. And let's make it a design-based assignment, and let's make it for in person, and let's do small groups and see what it generates for us. And just like before, it's taking all of our inputs, it's packaging them up into a prompt, and it's pushing that prompt to the OpenAI server in order to generate a response. And here is our response on the right. We get the kind of an overview of what the assignment involves. It looks like a hands-on activity to explore the physical, chemical, and biological components of estuaries. Uh, Gives you kind of a rough rundown of how you could essentially grade this, both the group component as well as the individual component. Uh, then it gives you some recommended scaffolding for actually managing the assignment and helping students get through the assignment. So it provides students with a list of resources that can be used to research estuaries, provide students with a template for their presentations, hold multiple check-in meetings with the groups, uh, provide individual feedback. This would all be useful scaffolding if you wanted to design an assignment like this. And then it also provides you with a worked example of how this assignment would look like in the real world. Like if you were to put into practice, what would it look like? What would the students be doing? What would uh, what would the activities actually involve? This gives you a rundown of what that would look like. So it talks about how they would begin their research, what they would be researching, and what hands-on activity they would actually be engaging in. Uh, so this is just another tool for having a little bit more creativity around uh maybe exploring new assignment types that maybe you haven't felt comfortable exploring with before. Ultimately, it's here to give you imagination for doing new things, trying new topics, and trying new styles of helping your students learn and being able to create that content much more quickly than you traditionally would be able to, uh, and also help you to be a little bit more thoughtful about what sorts of scaffolding you might want to provide students. Another tool that I developed was this explanation helper tool. Um, so one of the things that frequently encounter in the classroom is I'll be teaching some sort of computer science class, some sort of introduction to computer science class, and I will frequently have a lot of students from different majors in my class outside of computer science. So in many cases, I'll have healthcare, nursing students that are looking to fulfill their general science elective. Uh, and one of the things that I sometimes have a difficulty with doing is creating appropriate analogies that might resonate with them a little better or might feel more meaningful to their own goals and aspirations. And I think this is one of the things that AI can really help us with, help us have imagination for uh, the types of ways other people think. Like their schema for understanding the world is obviously going to be different than ours. If we're a literature teacher, if we are a computer science teacher, we're going to have like a different schema of metaphors and analogies than someone who is a healthcare professional might. And the purpose of this tool is to help us you know, be able to utilize those schemas and those analogies and those metaphors that we wouldn't be familiar with to connect our content to the students in a way that they can understand. So let's go with the example that I had, like how a computer works. And let's say we want to do it through, uh, try business analogies and see what it gives us. So as you can see here, it has generated a some sort of explanation or analogy for understanding how a computer works through the lens of business or organizational studies. So let's see what it gave us. A computer can be thought of at like a busy office building. All the components of the computer are like the departments in the building, each performing their own tasks in order to keep the building running. The processor is like the office manager, sending out tasks to other departments to make sure everything is running smoothly. The memory is like the filing cabinets where documents are stored. So this isn't too bad of an analogy. This is pretty good. Obviously, some analogies are going to be better than others. Sometimes it will give things that are a little obscure and cryptic, uh, but in some cases it does a pretty good job. Like we can see here, coming up with uh, appropriate analogs for things of one discipline in another. So this is the explanation helper tool. Uh, Here's a tool that I thought about, that, or at least I thought could be helpful for administrators and staff. I know a lot of these tools so far have been focused on helping faculty and instructors with designing content. Here's an app for administration and members of staff that might be interested in planning an initiative or doing some of their uh, early drafts for either grant proposals. This could potentially help those people out with doing some of those complex planning tasks. So essentially, with this app, you specify the initiative that you want to do at your college, or I guess it wouldn't necessarily even need to be a college. It could be really anywhere, any type of initiative that you want to do. And essentially, what it does is it helps you think through the process of planning that initiative. Uh, so let's say we want to do we want to, we'll stick with the example of redesign a college internet. So redesign the internal network for our college. We can click next, and it will come up with a plan for doing this. And what that plan will involve is it will involve a uh, a professional sounding description that covers like what some of the objectives might be for this. So here we are, we have the description of the initiative. The redesign college internet program at our community college is designed to provide faculty and staff with a more streamlined and efficient way to access important information. So this could be a pretty reasonable start for summarizing what you want to do. uh, After that, it gives us a rundown of some desired outcomes you might have if you were planning out this initiative. So, improved user experience with intuitive navigation and access to resources, improved security and data privacy measures, enhanced file sharing capabilities. Now, these are all pretty reasonable things that we would set as objectives if we were really planning on redesigning a college internet. So these aren't too bad. You get 10 pretty reasonable outcomes. Uh, Next, it gives us some metrics and KPIs for actually evaluating whether or not this initiative that we're doing is successful. Now, metrics and KPI are usually the tricky part when administrators and staff are trying to plan out an initiative. Uh, Not a lot of people uh, are trained to think about metrics and KPIs. It's something that you really have to be engrossed in a particular initiative for a long time to really be able to identify what would be meaningful ways of evaluating success for that initiative. So if this is your first time working within a particular initiative's like context space, uh, this this type of prompting could be incredibly helpful for like thinking about, okay, like how are we going to evaluate success? Like what will success look like? What sorts of data should we measure as we are running this initiative? So this metrics and KPI definitely could be a useful thing to provide. And finally, just the last thing this tool provides is a quarter by quarter breakdown of how you could allocate resources and spend your team's time when you are working on this initiative. So here we have like the first quarter would be all about gathering information from the stakeholders, analyzing the existing intranet, and defining a scope and like a more refined timeline. Then the second quarter would be doing your prototyping and testing, uh, some user experience related stuff. Third quarter is implementing your design and performing user feedback. And then like your fourth quarter would be actually launching your redesigned intranet and doing some follow-up uh, information gathering around that. So pretty reasonable. Obviously, this wouldn't be, you know, your whole grant proposal or your whole initiative description. This is more or less just a good starting point to get everyone on your team primed and thinking about what would need to be done on this project or initiative. One of the more interesting and fun apps that I've been working on more recently is this Jeopardy app. Uh, And how this works is we are able to give this app any topic that we're interested in, and it will automatically generate 5 different categories of questions related to that topic, as well as 5 questions of increasing difficulty for each of those categories. So let's give it a sample topic. Let's say human physiology. And let's ask it to generate those columns and generate the questions. So we can see here it's already generated some question categories for us: organ systems, homeostasis, skeletal system, nervous system, reproductive system. A pretty reasonable list of categories. Uh, if we click on 200, we can see what is the largest organ in the human body, what is the main organ of the excretory system, what is the primary organ of the respiratory system, what is the organ responsible for the production of hormones. So as you can see, the questions are getting a little more difficult as we go along. And finally, what is the organ responsible for the production of bile? And we get the same thing with the other categories. What are the 2 main functions of the skeletal system? We get kind of an easy question at the start, and then a slightly more sophisticated answer. What are the 2 types of muscle attachments in the skeletal system as we go along? Uh, just as a test, we can do another category. We could do hydrology of lakes. We could do something very specialized. And here we go. It was still able to generate pretty reasonable categories: limnology, lake formation, ecosystems, nutrient dynamics, water quality. Uh, so definitely a cool and interesting use. This is just to kind of demonstrate, how we could use AI to really transform the ways we generate, exciting and engaging content for students. Another app or another little thing that I've designed is a cognitive tutor tool. Uh, so essentially, this tool is designed to f- complement human tutors. Uh, so the student would type in a topic they want to practice. So let's say, evolution. Let's say we want to practice evolution. And what this tool will do is it will generate questions related to whatever topic we select, and it will automatically evaluate our responses to that question and generate a new question that relates to what we got wrong or relates to any misconceptions that we had. Um, so the new question will try to it'll ask a question that tries to remediate our understanding of the topic if we had some sort of misconception. So let's say, for example, what are the different mechanisms of evolution? If we give some sort of like low aptitude answer, if we say like stuff changes and we hit submit, uh, we'll get some encouraging feedback that kind of presses us to like reconsider our answer and points us more in the right direction of an answer. And then it asks a new question, like a follow-up question. What are the different types of evolutionary change? So it's really pushing us to dig deep into, it's pushing us to look at the feedback, reflect on that feedback, and then it asks a question that tries to remediate what we got wrong in the last question. Um, so like by this combination of asking a related question and providing feedback, the idea is that you can help students work through misunderstandings. Uh, so we could say like natural selection. And then it says, great job. Natural selection is a type of change. One is a key mechanism of driving evolution. Other types include genetic drift, migration, mutation. So we did good on that question. And it asks us, a follow-up and related question. And essentially this process repeats until it remediates all, our understanding around this particular, any misconceptions we have around this particular topic. So we could say, I don't know. And one of the other interesting things that it will attempt to do is, as we go along and as we become more proficient at answering the question, it will begin to ask questions that try to transfer our knowledge from one context, so like from natural systems, into another context, so a more maybe real world example of evolution in maybe our day-to-day lives, uh, maybe with like how social media ecosystems evolve or something like that. But the idea is that it tries to do a transfer from one discipline to another, to just to ensure that we really have a strong mastery of the particular topic that we wanted to practice. Um, Finally, what it does at the end uh, is it will actually create a tutoring ticket at the end that summarizes where our misconceptions are. So when we in theory, this this ticket would be forwarded to a human tutor who would be able to look at this and quickly get an understanding of where this particular student is struggling, and would be able to provide more personalized and tailored help to that student uh, just faster. Because otherwise, when you don't have a system like this in place, the tutor has to do this process for themselves of trying to like triage where your misconceptions are, what you're struggling the most with. This would at least help that human tutor out a little bit and get them save a little time with figuring out like, okay, what are some of the most important things we need to fix around your understanding of this topic. Uh, so that's the cognitive tutor app. Uh, there's one other app that I have very recently been working on that I will share with you now. Just have to change the screen. Uh, so how this app works is I've lately I've been receiving a lot of questions about the bias associated with AI, as well as the ethical use related to AI. And I've been working on a tool that can kind of try to address some of that, at least through AI. I know that's not the ideal solution, but it at least will get people thinking a little bit more critically about some of the uh, not necessarily the drawbacks of using AI, but some of the cautions of blindly taking information that you get from AI and then integrating it into an assignment or integrating it into your curriculum in some other way. Uh, so, an example of how this works: we give it a topic or some sort of task we want it to generate a response for. We select an output language, so it will generate responses in other languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese. We select a tone of what type of response we want, and then we select what audience we have. Do we have a general audience, technical audience, academic, business, medical, legal? And then we specify the length of our response. Obviously, at some point I will provide like explanations of what a short, medium, long response length actually corresponds to. But for now, short is just like a paragraph long, and we can have it generate a response around this, and it will give us an assessment or an evaluation of what it thinks the bias risk of this response is. So in this case, it has a pretty low bias caution. There isn't too much controversial or information in this. There's not a lot of data that's being utilized that could potentially have some sort of bias, some sort of implicit bias from whoever designed the data set, or whatever data set the AI is scanning to generate this response has a pretty low bias. And then on the right, you can see here the ethical use. This is just a summary of like what the AI thinks the appropriate context for using this information would be, and how you could use it ethically. So it is important to be mindful of ethical limitations of using AI generated responses in a general context. AI generated responses can lack context and nuance. Oh, that's the other thing. This ethical use statement will vary based both on the response that's generated and also by the audience type you select. So if you select a general audience, your ethical use might be very different than if you selected a medical or a legal audience. In which case, you might have a medical audience, and if you're getting a response about some sort of potential medical intervention, the ethical use could be very, a lot more complicated, and you might have more bias as well. Uh, so let's ask like a slightly different response. So let's say like, racial preferences or ice cream flavors. Let's ask something that would most more likely have a more of a racial bias to it. So as we can see, it generated a speculative statement about, what ice cream flavors are preferred by different ethnic groups. And as you can see here, we have more bias caution, right? Because this information is speculative, involves different racial or ethnic groups. That doesn't necessarily have much, empirical backing to any of this. Uh, and then we have a slightly longer ethical use statement here, because now we've introduced more bias into this response. Uh, this is still very early kind of prototype design, but I think thinking about ethical use and thinking about bias in terms of information being generated by AI is an incredibly important topic, and I think that this is something we're going to see more people both researching and trying to develop tools around. Uh, let's see. That is more or less it. The last thing people tend to be interested in, I can do this pretty quickly, is people tend to be interested in how we can use AI tools for assessment. Uh, in other words, how can we use AI tools to, if a student gives us an essay and we have our rubric for the course, how can we use the AI to u- use that rubric to analyze that student's work? Uh, so let me give an example of how we could potentially do this. So let's have the AI generate like a two-paragraph essay for us. So let's tell ChatGPT to generate a two-paragraph essay in the style of a high school student. Include some usage and grammatical mistakes. Uh, include a slightly confusing thesis. We'll have it generate a two-paragraph essay. It doesn't really matter what the topic is, and we'll have it do it according to those other parameters I specified. We generated a three-paragraph essay. Uh, that's fine. So we will specify now for it to generate a rubric for assessing a three-paragraph essay at the college level. And right here, you can see that it'll generate a rough rubric. Now, what we can do now is we have our rubric and we also have our essay. So we can do a new prompt that is use this or use the following rubric. And we can do colon, and then we can copy this rubric and just paste it in here. We can do shift enter, and then we can do to assess the following three-paragraph essay written by a student. We can do colon, This is where we would just take the essay and paste it in. You can get results that are a little wonky, but we'll see how this goes. So it's given kind of a written analysis, giving it like an excellent score. Uh, you can tell it rewrite to give a points breakdown for each of the rubric categories. So now we have points associated with each of the categories that we want to evaluate for. And it's evaluating that essay by this points breakdown. So it's saying overall, this essay would receive a score of out of 40 for content, a score out of 30 for grammar, and a score out of 30 for style and clarity. So it's giving it 100. Like I said, we can get sometimes it gets wonky results when you input a essay that the AI has generated. If you input an essay that a student generated, it will often uh, evaluate it a little more effectively. Another thing is Bing will often do a more effective evaluation of it than ChatGPT. Uh, and I think we might have just a little bit more time to see exactly what a Bing evaluation of the essay might look like. So let me change screen share for just a second. And before we end this, I will do one last sample. So this is the Bing interface. And what I am going to do is I'm going to copy in that same response or same prompt I gave ChatGPT that evaluating that essay. So I'm going to paste that in here. So as you can see here again, use the following rubric. The 40% for content, 30% for grammar and mechanics, 30% for style and clarity, and we're having it assess that essay. Well, let's see what it does. So, as you can see, Bing is a little bit more stringent in applying the rubric. It's able to more accurately identify mistakes than ChatGPT. Bing in general is just a more sophisticated model than ChatGPT. So it's able to do things like tasks like this, more complex tasks that require like some degree of like semantic analysis. It's able to do these better than ChatGPT. So as you can see here, it gave it for content a 28 out of 40. For grammar and mechanics, it gave it a 24 out of 30. Style and clarity and 21 out of 30. So this is a bit more in line with the actual quality of the essay I gave it. But that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have any questions about either the content I went over, or maybe you want to play around with some of the tools that I made, I'm happy to share those as well as answer any emails that you have. Thank you again for watching.